Many people have a plan for the retirement account they're leaving their children. The account keeps growing after you die, the kids take a little out each year, and it stretches across their whole lives. That plan was real and it had a name. Planners called it the Stretch IRA, and for anyone who inherited an account before 2020, it worked exactly that way. It doesn't exist anymore for most heirs, though. Congress ended it with the Secure Act, and what replaced it is not a slower version of the same thing. It's a 10-year window with a hard deadline at the end, and for many families, a distribution due every single year along the way. I've had this conversation with people before, and someone walks me through their plan, and it's a good plan. They saved well, the 401k rolled into an IRA, the balance has grown for 30 years, and the beneficiary form names their two adult children. Then I ask, what happens when the kids inherit it? And the answer is usually some version of, they'll take it slowly. They can't. And it matters more here than anywhere else in your plan because the pre-tax retirement account is the one asset where what you do in your 60s and 70s changes how much of it your children actually keep. I'm Josh Duncan, partner at F5 Financial Planning, where we take a fiduciary approach to maximizing our clients' wealth. Today, you'll learn what the 10-year rule actually requires, which of your beneficiaries is exempt from it, why the timing of the withdrawals matter more than the size of the account, and 4 things you can do now to change the outcome. I've also put together a reference sheet that maps each type of beneficiary to the payout rule and the deadline that applies to them, and you can download it from the link in the description. So, what replaced the Stretch IRA? Let's start with the rule. If you die and your IRA goes to someone who isn't a small group of exempt beneficiaries, that person has to empty the account by December 31st of the year containing the 10th anniversary of your death. Die in 2026 and the account has to be at zero by the end of 2036. 10 calendar years. And then it's finished. That covers adult children, which is who many people name. It also covers nieces, nephews, grandchildren, friends, and anyone else who inherits an account that isn't on the exempt list. I'll walk through next. Here's the part that has changed recently, and it's the reason I wanted to make the video now. For the first several years after the Secure Act, nearly everyone read the 10-year rule the same way. Nothing is due until year 10. Take money out whenever you want inside the window, and as long as the account is empty at the end. The IRS published final regulations in 2024 that settled it differently. If you had already reached the age when your own required minimum distribution began, your beneficiary owes a distribution every year inside the 10-year window and still has to empty the account by the end of it. 2 obligations at the same time, an annual amount and a final deadline. If you die before reaching the age when your RMDs begin, there's no annual requirement. Your beneficiary has the full 10 years to decide when to take money out. And the deadline is the only thing they have to meet. So the answer turns on where you were in your own required distribution timeline when you died. Those regulations apply to distribution years beginning on or after January 1st of 2025. Before that, the IRS waived the penalty for beneficiaries who miss these annual RMDs in a series of notices covering 2021 through 2024. That waiver period has run out. 2025 was the first year the annual RMD requirement applied with no relief behind it, and 2026 is the second year, which brings up the mistake worth avoiding. And it's the one I'd expect from an heir who read about this in 2021 and hasn't looked at it since. 10 years is the outer wall. For many families, it's not the schedule. So who still gets to stretch it? Not every beneficiary is subject to that 10-year window. The law carves out a group it calls eligible designated beneficiaries, and they keep the old lifetime payout. There are 5 of them. A surviving spouse. Your spouse has more options than anyone else on this list. They can treat your IRA as their own, roll it into their own account, or stay a beneficiary and take distributions across their own life expectancy. A child of yours who hasn't reached the age of majority, an heir who is disabled under the definition of the tax code uses, an heir who is chronically ill, and anyone who is not more than 10 years younger than you. That one covers a sibling close to your age or a partner you never married. Two details inside that list are worth slowing down for. The first is the minor child rule because it's narrower than it sounds. The regulations fix the age of majority at 21, regardless of what your state says about when someone becomes an adult. When that child turns 21, they stop being an eligible designated beneficiary and the 10-year clock starts running from there. The account has to be empty by the time they're 31. The second detail affects more families. It has to be your child. A grandchild does not qualify under that rule, no matter how young they are. Leaving a retirement account to a young grandchild does not give them a lifetime of distributions. It gives them 10 years. One more thing about this list. Your beneficiary's status is locked in at the date of your death. Someone who is not more than 10 years younger than you at that moment stays eligible for the rest of the payout, and a child who is 19 when you die is eligible then, with the clock behaving the way I just described once they turn 21. Run your own beneficiary forms against those 5 categories. For many people watching this, the person inheriting the largest pre-tax account is an adult child somewhere in their 40s or 50s, which is frequently the highest earning stretch of their life. So, why is waiting until year 10 the most expensive way to do this? Distributions from an inherited traditional IRA are ordinary income to whoever receives them. They land on top of everything that person already earns, and they're taxed at whatever rate their own income puts them in. That's the whole thing, not the balance of the account, the bracket each distribution lands in. 2 sisters each inherit $500,000 from the same parent in the same year under the same 10-year rule. The first one spreads her withdrawals across the full window, roughly even amounts 10 years running, sized to fit alongside her salary without pushing her into a higher bracket. Her sister does what feels responsible. She leaves it alone, lets it grow, and takes the entire balance in year 10 because that's the deadline she was given. Same starting balance, same rule. The second sister stacks 10 years of growth into one tax return on top of a full year of her own income. And a large piece of it gets taxed at the highest rate she will ever pay. That 1 year of inflated income can also reach other things that key off income, including her own Medicare premiums, if she's old enough for that to matter, and her sister's smaller distributions never do any of that. I'm not going to put a dollar figure on the gap because it depends entirely on the 2 sisters' own incomes and the rates in effect of each of those years. The direction isn't in question though, and the size of it usually surprises people. There's a second cost to waiting, and it applies specifically to heirs of someone who had already started the required distributions. If an annual amount was due and nobody took it, there's an excise tax on the shortfall, 25% of the amount that should have come out. That drops to 10% if it's corrected within a 2-year correction window, and the IRS will still waive it for reasonable cause if the beneficiary files the right form and explains what happened. But it's a penalty for a paperwork problem, and it's completely avoidable. So, an heir who assumes nothing is due until year 10 can be wrong twice. Once on the tax rate and once on a penalty they never knew applied to them. So, what can you actually do about it? 4 things, all 4 happen while you're alive. First, compare your own tax bracket to your children's. People find this one backwards at first. If you're retired living on a mix of Social Security and portfolio withdrawals and your taxable income is lower than it has been in 30 years, you're very likely in a lower bracket than the adult child who will inherit this account. Every dollar you pull out of the pre-tax account and pay tax on at your rate is a dollar your child never has to pay tax on at theirs. The years between when you retire and when your own required distributions begin are usually the widest gap that ever gets. That window opens and closes, and it's worth knowing where you are in it. Second, Roth conversions for a reason that goes past your own tax bill. An inherited Roth IRA is still subject to the 10-year rule. The deadline doesn't disappear. What disappears is the annual requirement because the owner of a Roth IRA is always treated as having died before required distributions began. Your child inherits full control of the timing. 10 years, nothing due at any particular year, and no income tax on any of it whenever it comes out. They can take it the year they're between jobs or the year they buy a house or all at once, and the tax result is the same. I've covered how conversions work and how to size them in a separate video on this channel, so I won't repeat the mechanics here. The point for today is that a conversion isn't only a decision about your own retirement, it's a decision about what your children receive and how much freedom they have with it. Third, qualified charitable distributions if giving is already a part of your plan. Beginning at 70 and a half, you can send money directly from an IRA to a qualified charity. In 2026, you can move up to $111,000 that way. It counts towards your required minimum distribution, and it never enters your adjusted gross income. That's pre-tax money leaving your estate with no income tax paid on it by anyone. If giving some of this away was always part of the plan, the pre-tax IRA is the most efficient account to give it from, and it happens to be the account your heirs would have been taxed on the hardest. Fourth, name beneficiaries account by account instead of splitting everyone evenly. Many people fill out every beneficiary form the same way, 50% to each child, across the IRA, the Roth, and the brokerage account. It feels fair and it's simple. It also ignores that those three accounts arrive in completely different tax condition. The Roth comes out free of income tax. The brokerage account gets a step up in basis at your death. And the pre-tax IRA shows up with a tax bill attached and a 10-year clock running. If your children are in very different tax situations, the pre-tax account is worth more to the one in the lower bracket. And if charity is part of your plan at all, the pre-tax account is the best thing to leave to it because a qualified charity pays no income tax on what it receives. Splitting every account evenly hands each person the same fraction of the tax problem. Directing the accounts deliberately can leave the same total to the same people and less to the IRS. One caution across all four. The right answer depends on your bracket, your children's bracket, your state, and what you actually want this money to do. Talk it through with your financial planner and your tax professional before you act on any of it. And if a trust is named as a beneficiary anywhere in your estate plan, bring your attorney into that conversation because the rules for a trust as a beneficiary are a separate subject from this one. And the stretch IRA ended for most heirs with the Secure Act, and the 10-year rule that replaced it is stricter than the way it was first understood. Your beneficiary has to empty the account by the end of the 10th year after your death. If you had already started your own required distributions, they owe an amount every year along the way, and the relief that once covered those missed annual amounts ran through 2024. A small group of beneficiaries still get a lifetime payout. A spouse, a minor child of yours until age 21, a disabled or chronically ill heir, and anyone within 10 years of your age. A grandchild is not on that list. What determines how much of the account survives isn't its balance. It's the bracket each distribution lands in, which is why waiting until year 10 and taking it all at once is usually the most expensive way to do it. And the decisions that change the answer are yours, not your children's. Your own withdrawals during your low bracket years, conversions to Roth, giving from pre-tax account rather than the taxable one, and naming beneficiaries with the tax character of each account in mind. This is the kind of thing a fiduciary planner should be watching across 2 generations instead of 1. When we plan a client's distributions, the question isn't only what it costs them this year, it's what it sets up for the people who inherit what's left, because a retirement account that's efficient for you and expensive for your children hasn't finished doing its job. Thanks for joining me today. If you would like to learn more about how F5 Financial Planning helps our clients achieve financial freedom for personal significance, please visit our website at www.f5fp.com.